Two people get offered the exact same remote job. Same salary, same laptop, same flexible schedule. 1 year later, one of them describes it as the best career decision they ever made. The other quietly asks to go back to the office, exhausted and strangely unhappy, even though nothing about the actual work changed. Same job, same freedom, completely different outcome. So what's really going on? Remote work isn't simply good or bad. It's more like a mirror. It doesn't create new problems so much as it removes an old structure, and what happens next depends heavily on what that structure was quietly doing for you. Here's the first insight, and it explains a huge amount of the difference. An office provides built-in structure that most people never consciously notice until it disappears. Fixed hours, a physical desk, colleagues nearby, a boss occasionally walking past. None of that requires willpower. It simply exists around you, gently keeping you on track. Remote work removes almost all of that instantly. Suddenly, staying focused depends entirely on internal motivation instead of external structure. Some people genuinely thrive here because they were always slightly held back by rigid office structure and finally get to work in a rhythm that actually suits their brain. But for someone who relied on external structure without realizing it, the sudden freedom doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like standing in an open field with no path, and that's genuinely exhausting for a specific kind of person. Think about someone who always did their best work with a deadline looming and a colleague visibly working nearby. At home, alone, with nobody watching, that same person might reopen the same document 11 times over a single afternoon, getting almost nothing done, not from laziness, but from the simple absence of the invisible social pressure that used to move them forward. Here's where most people get it completely wrong. They assume struggling with remote work means someone lacks discipline. Often, it's not about discipline at all. It's about losing a structural crutch they never had to think about before, because it was never their job to build it themselves. Now for the second insight, and this one surprises people who assumed remote work would obviously improve their life. Without a physical boundary between work and home, many people find that work quietly expands to fill every available hour. The commute used to do something valuable nobody appreciated at the time. It created a clear psychological line. Leaving the office building meant work was, at least symbolically, over. Working from the same couch where you relax in the evening removes that line completely. So instead of working less, plenty of remote workers report working more, checking messages at 9 at night, unable to fully relax, because their brain never received a clear signal that the workday actually ended. Picture someone finishing a video call in their living room, closing the laptop, and immediately feeling like they're still somehow at work, even hours later. Nothing physically changed in the room, so nothing tells their mind it's genuinely time to switch off. This connects to the third insight, and it's probably the most emotional one. Offices provide something that has almost nothing to do with actual tasks, incidental social contact. Small talk by the coffee machine, a shared laugh at someone's desk, a quick hallway conversation about nothing important. None of it feels significant in the moment, but it quietly meets a real social need for a lot of people. Remote work strips that away almost completely. For someone with a rich social life outside of work, close friends, an active family, regular hobbies with other people, this barely registers as a loss. But for someone whose main daily social contact happened to come from coworkers, remote work can create a surprisingly sharp, lonely silence that has nothing to do with the actual job itself. Here's a short story that captures this well. A woman once described feeling perfectly fine working remotely for the first few months, then slowly noticing she'd gone entire days speaking only to a delivery driver. It wasn't the work that was draining her. It was the quiet disappearance of dozens of tiny daily human interactions she never realized she depended on until they were gone. So what can you actually do with this? First, figure out honestly which of these three things you personally relied on most: structure, boundaries, or social contact, because remote work challenges each person differently, and the fix depends entirely on which one is missing for you. If structure is the problem, build artificial versions of it deliberately, fixed start times, visible to-do lists, or even working alongside someone else online in a shared video call just to recreate that gentle social pressure. If boundaries are the problem, create a physical ritual that marks the end of the day, closing the laptop in a different room, or a short walk that mimics the old commute. And if isolation is the real issue, schedule real social contact on purpose, since it will no longer happen automatically the way it once did. Remote work doesn't fail people randomly. It simply reveals which invisible supports you were quietly leaning on all along, and once you can name them, you can usually rebuild them yourself.